to the Panasonic Cinelive Masterclass. My name is Mitchell Neff. I'm a broadcast engineer by trade, and I've actively worked in the realm of broadcast engineering for live sports and entertainment for 4 years, and served in some capacity in and out of church production for 10 years. The purpose of this class is to fill in an informational void I've seen when it comes to the Panasonic Cinelive system, and more specifically Cinelive when used with the Panasonic Varicam LTs. I hope to one day get my hands on the EVO 1 system to uncover how it operates for a live setting, but for now we'll be unpacking the higher end Varicam LT and its ability to turn from being a digital cinema camera to being a fully fledged broadcast camera. Here in episode 1, we're simply going to discuss the system components that make up the Cinelive workflow, what options are available for those different hardware pieces, and what features you gain in the system with higher end components. So let's start with the heart of the system, the camera. In front of me, I have the Varicam LT from Panasonic. This camera was released in March of 2016 to the professional cinema market as a smaller form factor option, Super 35 sensor, PL or EF mount digital cinema camera to act as the third in Panasonic's lineup of high-end digital cinema cameras, alongside the Varicam 35 and Varicam Pure. The sensor has some great things going for it even today, as this camera is over 5 years old. It features dual native ISOs of 800 and 5000 ISO, a little over 14 stops of dynamic range, and a Super 35 equivalent image plane measuring 24.576 millimeters by 12.96 millimeters. And it has 4096 by 2160 photo sites, making this a native 4K CMOS rolling shutter sensor. A quick note on the rolling shutter sensor. In the broadcast world, global shutter sensors are all the rage, as they can better mitigate the negative interactions experienced between LED walls and camera sensors that result in poor artifacts like the moire effect and scrolling horizontal lines visible on screens. Cameras like Hitachi's HD 1800 and Sony's HDC 5500 are hailed for having global shutter sensors that are favored in studio and live environments alike, which have more and more LED tile configurations. However, the Varicam LT was made as a cinema camera first, meant to provide the utmost pristine image for post-production applications, meaning that when making it, Panasonic opted for a rolling shutter design to be able to achieve a couple of things that benefit the digital cinema market. Those include the ability to add dual native ISO. Global shutter would take too much space on the image plane to maintain the additional analog circuits that are needed for dual native ISO. Global shutter also inherently reduces dynamic range by about a stop, and overall noise is added to the image circuit. The Varicam comes standard with the Canon EF mount, but can be user replaced with a PL mount, which has become the standard for Super 35 format ENG type zoom lenses. Speaking of lenses, there are many options available, but seemingly not enough for lenses that work well for applications that would normally opt for a broadcast camera chain, but want the image benefits of Cinelive. Let's start with Super 35 format zoom lenses. The two primary brands in this category are Fujinon and Canon, with Angunu having their couple of offerings as well. The most important part of finding a lens compatible with this system, and that's also appropriate for broadcast, is having a fast t-stop, having a broad zoom range, and having a servo grip attached to the lens that has control of the aperture ring, zoom ring, and focus ring, with a broadcast standard Hirose connector to allow the camera to pass signals to the lens to control iris, and for the camera operator to read current zoom and focus ranges for the operator to see. For simplicity, let's just get on B&H and we'll take a look at a variety of lenses so you can get a feel for what you're getting dollar for dollar feature-wise and what kind of zoom ranges you're getting for lenses that are compatible with this system. Okay, so here we are on B&H. Just wanted to inform you too, this is being shot in October of 2021. So if you're watching this like far in the future, there may be totally different selections available and there may be totally different pricing. But for this snapshot in history, you can kind of see and get a glimpse of what these prices are. So the way that I find these lenses is going into Pro Video, go down to lenses and lens accessories. We're not doing professional lenses anymore. Those are all for B4 lens mounts. We're going to go into digital cine lenses. But what you'll find is most of these, while they may be zooms, don't have digital servo grips, which is one of the biggest things we're needing. So to specify it and kind of narrow results, we don't want primes, we want zooms, so I'm going to select zoom lenses. We'll select PL mount, why not? And then also down here, we're going to select features and servo zoom grip. You can see that only gave us about 11 offerings. We can free it up a little bit by unchecking PL mount. You can see there are 10 options available just for Canon EF as well. So down here, we got Kind of the cheapest option right now, which is the Canon CNE 18-80, coming in at $4,600, and that's t4.4. So that's a pretty closed off aperture. It's not super fast, but it does give you a servo zoom, which is communicated through the EF mount. It doesn't actually need a 12-pin Hirose connector to connect to the camera. If we scroll down here, you can see the lens that I was just holding that goes on our camera bodies, the Fuji 20-120 t3.5. That's a constant aperture, and same for these. Those two Canons were constant apertures. That's something you want to look for in these lenses. As they get larger here, we've got the 70-200, which is a little bit more expensive. We have Fuji's ZK 19-90 t2.9. So this is really similar to the lens I was just showing you on the desk, but it's much more expensive, and it maintains a t2.9 aperture, which is a bit faster. It just can't zoom in as much. We have the Fuji 85-300, which is also a great option, more of a telephoto zoom lens, measuring at t2.9 to 4.0. This ramps its constant t2.9 until it gets to 218 millimeters, and then it starts to ramp down to t4.0. We have Canon Cine servos, the 25-250 t2.95. This is a great lens. As I was saying, Angwina has their offerings of lenses. These are just really high end for what they, if you look around at the other two brands, their pricing is very, very high. Canon Cine Servo 50-1000 millimeter t5 to 8.9. So not a constant aperture. It's also pretty slow, measuring at t5 and slower with an EF mount and PL mount. But these are really designed for, nature. If you're up in a helicopter shooting down at nature shots, you can really get some good zoom in daylight with those, but maybe not the best for low light applications. So these are pretty much all the offerings that are on B&H right now. I know Fuji has more options if you look in their catalog, including, and I think it's worth pulling up, I'll navigate to their site and show you Fujinon's 25-300 millimeter. So FujinonCineLenses.com is a great place also to be able to look at a catalog of what lenses are available specifically from Fujinon. Now, you won't get any pricing on this website, as they expect you to get pricing through your dealer or whoever you're buying through, but this is a great place just to see what lens offerings are available. Now, these are all of their cinema zoom lenses, so some of these don't include a servo drive unit. Here in the ZK Cabrio series, all of these feature a servo drive unit. Now, in the picture, we don't see one for the ZK 12-25, which is a monstrous 25-300 millimeter focal length, but it is optional for this lens. You can purchase it separate to be able to use it for broadcast. It's a removable servo zoom grip. You'll see this lens at the highest level of Cinelive systems, as it maintains a pretty wide aperture at t3.5 and ramps down to t3.8 at the very end of that range, but can get very wide at 25 millimeters and very tight at 300. And I just want to remind you that these millimeter ranges don't necessarily translate very well to B4 lenses. And so you really have to see these lenses in person and experience how far they can zoom in to get a good reference to how these would compare to almost like box lenses, because this lens is a monster. It's 8.4 kilograms, which weighs in at 18.5 pounds. So this thing is huge, and being able to support it takes almost the same amount of support as it does for a broadcast box lens. And so just something to consider, but this is definitely one of the most popular lenses for Cinelive here in October of 2021. So as you can see, the options are good, but none of these lenses make you go, that one. That is the lens perfect for all applications. They all have their advantages and drawbacks. Now, the other option when it comes to lenses is to use existing B4 broadcast lenses. Now, there are two ways to go about this. Option 1 is using the IBE Optics HDX35 Mark III B4 to PL mount adapter. Kind of a mouthful. This adapter optically corrects for the engineering of traditional 2/3 inch lenses meant for 3CCD sensors, and allows the use of existing B4 mount lenses on the single CMOS sensor Varicam LT. Its key feature is that it takes the image from the exit pupil of a B4 lens and stretches it to cover the entirety of the Super 35 sensor. This comes with its own costs though. The adapter magnifies the lens by 2.6 times, which may be undesirable for very wide angle shots, those such as jib or beauty shots, and also decreases the light of the lens by 2.5 stops, due to more glass elements being between the lens and the sensor. It also adds another $4,000 to a single camera chain, meaning that the B4 lens used must have a very specific purpose and need to be used on that camera, with pros that outweigh just getting a native Super 35 lens. Option 2 is using the IBE Optics HDX 1.4 B4 to PL adapter. This adapter, again, optically corrects for 2/3 inch glass meant for 3CCD chips. But instead of stretching the exit pupil to cover the entire sensor, this adapter only modifies the image to hit exactly 50% of the Super 35 sensor in the middle, which has some advantages. First is that it only magnifies the lens by 1.4 times as opposed to the 2.6 crop factor of the other adapter. And second is that it only drops 1.3 stops of light as opposed to the 2.5 of the other adapter. This still has a cost, however, because you can only cover 50% of the sensor. You have to operate the Varicam in cropped sensor mode, which is up to 1920 by 1080 only, meaning that if you intend to be doing 4K production with this camera and a B4 lens, you will need to go for the option 1 adapter. The other critical piece to the Cinelive system is the Panasonic AK HRP 1000. In theory, only having a Varicam, a lens, and an HRP 1000 sets you up to be able to run a Varicam in Cinelive configuration, albeit a bit limited in setup. The HRP 1000 is immediately recognizable to broadcast engineers as a standard quarter rack unit length camera RCP, being comparable to the Sony RCP 1500 and Hitachi RU 1500 in both size and look. Like those other brands, there are other RCPs in this lineup that have been released to work with the Cinelive system, but have reduced feature sets to save costs per unit. Those other models include the HRP 1005, the 5 being referenced to this unit being a 5th rack unit, which has fewer function buttons and dials but still maintains the LCD menu navigation screen. And the HRP 200, which removes the LCD screen altogether in favor of a smaller profile of unit. In this case, we will only be focusing on the HRP 1000 though, as it is most equipped to support the Cinelive system. So now that we have a camera, a lens, and a way to control the camera, we need a way to enable this system with the full functionality of a broadcast camera. If you're new to broadcast engineering, this list of necessities includes the following: SDI camera to switcher, SDI pics from camera to engineering, return video from the switcher to the camera, analog audio inputs from the camera to an audio console, external sync pulse reference or genlock into the camera, tally, color control / lens control, two-way intercom, and power. There are currently 2 systems on the market that are built to achieve this for the Cinelive system and Varicam. Those systems are the DTS 1800 fiber system and the Multidyne Silverback 5 system. Both of these systems consist of 2 main parts: a camera fiber converter, which locks in via gold mount or V-mount to the back of the Varicam, and a studio fiber converter, which sits in the rack in the studio. These 2 pieces are connected together via a single LEMO SMPTE standard 311 cable, which contains 2 single-mode fibers and 6 copper contacts for power delivery. Both the camera and studio fiber converters are converting incoming SDI, analog audio, contact closure tally, and Ethernet LAN signals to be muxed or combined into the fiber to come out the other unit. These signals are bidirectional via the 2 fiber optic cables. So let's look at this setup from the top down. In the studio, we have racked up the studio fiber converter, which is wired in to receive these inputs: 2 return signals from the switcher, 2 4-wire unbalanced audio intercom party line sends, genlock reference input, a contact closure tally connected to the production network via Ethernet, and power. It is also wired with outputs, including the camera SDI out, a secondary engineering PICS camera out, 2 mic lines, and 2 4-wire unbalanced party line receives. The studio fiber converter converts all those signals into the LEMO SMPTE 311 cable and does the vice versa on the camera end. On the camera end comes out the 2 return signals, the 2 intercom party line receives, the genlock reference, a tally contact closure, Ethernet, and power. Lines put into the camera fiber converter include the camera out, the secondary engineering PICS out, the 2 microphone lines, and the 2 intercom party line sends. So as you can see, all signals needed to connect a studio to a camera and a camera to a studio are able to be put on one cable for convenience and integration or deployment. In episode 4, we will look closer in depth at the Multidyne Silverback 5 hands-on and the DTS 1800 on paper to see what benefits and drawbacks each system has for Cinelive. hope you learned something from this video. In episode 2, we'll be taking a closer look at all the parts of the hardware mentioned in this video and more, to know where to look to find certain buttons, functions, plugs, and cables. Thank you for watching.